Video games are some of the most immersive forms of entertainment, with vast open worlds to explore and incredible storytelling, whilst movies offer stunning visuals and some evoke incredibly strong emotional reactions, making us laugh or sometimes even cry. So combining the two, wow, you'd get something special. Welcome back to the channel, and yes, today we're going to be taking a look at the boom of movie-based video games, specifically in the 2000s. We're going to have a brief look at the history of them, then look at some of the wackier games that came out in the 2000s, because there are some crazy games. And then we're actually going to go out shopping to see if we can find any of these games in the wild, pick them up, try them out, and see what they're all about. So settle down, get yourself comfortable, get some snacks in, and let's begin with a look at the history books. So video games based on movies, it makes complete logical sense, right? You know, you go to the cinema, watch the latest blockbuster, and you come out thinking, I didn't want that to end. I want to experience more of that. Because I know whenever I watch a movie I like, I always sort of have this feeling, I don't know if anyone else gets this, where I want to be the main character. I want to be like, so if I've ever watched like James Bond, I'll come out thinking, yeah, I could do that. I could be really cool like James Bond. Maybe no one else thinks that, but do you know what? I think that. Like, I watched Twisters the other day, and as soon as it finished, I was thinking, I could be like a cool, you know, rodeo guy, going out hunting, you know, tornadoes. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, there is of course a form of entertainment that allows you to do this, where you can experience more of a movie, or maybe even play it out yourself, whilst at the same time offering the film studio another chance to cash in on the hype of a movie, and also maybe even, you know, expand the hype, create more of a dedicated fan base to it. Yes, of course, I'm talking about video games, and film studios obviously realised this, and game developers as well, because as soon as video games, you know, became commercially available, movie-based video games absolutely flourished. But when did this start out? Well, actually in the 70s. Video games began to be commercially available both at home and in the arcades in the 70s, with Pong releasing in 1972 and the Magnavox Odyssey releasing in the same year, becoming the first video game console available. But finding out what the first video game based on movie is surprisingly difficult, because there's technically a Guinness World Record for this, given to Atari's Raiders of the Lost Ark, which came out in 1982. However, there's a Superman game which came out in 1979, so I don't know. Either way, video games boomed in the 80s, and they looked like this, and as you can guess from them looking like this, they weren't the hardest things to develop, so video game companies were absolutely pumping them out. And so this meant when E.T. released to box office success in 1982, developers rushed to acquire the rights to make a video game version. However, these rights were only acquired in July of 1982, already a month after the film had released. And so if this developer wanted to cash in on the hype of this movie, they really needed to make this video game fast. They set a goal of making it by the holiday season, and that gave them only 5 weeks to make the game. And even though the games looked like this, 5 weeks was still an incredibly short amount of time, and so as you can expect, the game wasn't very good. In fact, it's often regarded as one of the worst video games of all time, and the public were not buying it. Thousands of copies of the game were returned to Atari, but Atari had expected this to be a huge success, so they'd printed out loads of copies of this game, which meant they had tons of them, and they didn't know what else to do with them, so they created a mass burial for them in New Mexico. But the damage wasn't done yet, because the game was so bad, it really harmed video games' reputation, and soon after, the market, especially North America, crashed. So not a great start for the quality of movie-based video games. Anyway, even though at the time it seemed unlikely, video games did of course revive, thanks majorly to the Nintendo Entertainment System and of course Mario. And they returned bigger than ever. So guess what also returned? Movie-based video games. However, unlike last time, some of these games were actually quite good quality. You've got the Star Wars games, Indiana Jones games, Disney's first game in DuckTales. Of course, you did still have some stinkers though, like the Back to the Future games, Friday the 13th, and Jaws. Into the 90s, and movie-based video games continued to flourish. In fact, more than double the amount of games were released in this decade. And this was because video games themselves continued to grow, and the hardware they were on was getting better and better. And this meant more movie companies were actually happy to license their movies, because, well, the video games could represent them better. Of course, with the amount of games released in this decade, there were some absolute honkers. One that springs to mind is Superman 64, which is regarded as terrible, but once again, there were some really great games. GoldenEye 007, even though it released a couple of years after the movie, is regarded as one of the best video games of all time. Video games were growing every single year at this point, and by the late 90s, pretty much every single movie that was releasing was now having a video game, and that leads us perfectly onto the decade we're going to be focusing on, the 2000s. The 2000s is where we see the biggest boom in movie-based video games. Genuinely, if you try and think of a movie that released in 2000s, I'd say there's an 80% chance there's a video game based on it, and if you're thinking of a children's movie, that number goes basically up to 100%. If you're wondering about how many more actually got released in this decade, I attempted to count how many were released in 2000 compared to the other decades, and this is what I got. In the 70s, it's kind of hard to tell, but I'm going to go with 2. In the 80s, it was about 90. In the 90s, about 170. And in the 2000s, nearly 300. I think the reason the boom of the 2000s is so substantial, though, is because of kids' movies. So video games before the late 90s, a big majority of the install base were maybe what you call hardcore gamers. It was all about being mature, right? It was, what video game had the best graphics, what video game had the most blood. That was like all the advertising was about that. And that's because that was what was cool to both adults and children that basically wanted to be older. And because the industry at the time was so new, the technology was evolving really, really quickly. And that meant that there was such a big push on graphics and features. I mean, look at the advertising for the Sega Mega Drive.
The Sega Genesis has blast processing. Super Nintendo doesn't. So what's blast processing do? And what if you don't have blast processing?
But I think when we got to the 2000s and as gaming continued to grow, companies, they wanted to expand their markets, and they saw that actual casual gamers, that could be a really big market. And of course this happened before the 2000s, but I think this was the decade it really took off. And if you want an example of this, look at the Wii, okay? That released in 2006 with basically the same hardware as the GameCube, and it was still a huge success. And so with this expanded casual market and, more parents being, open to, video games, nearly every kids movie had a video game tie-in. And that, along with the fact that the 2000s were just generally quite weird, means that there are absolutely tons of incredibly weird video games out there. Some really good ones, some very strange ones, and that's what we're going to take a look at now. So when I think of kids movies from the 2000s, I think of animated films, right? I think of DreamWorks, I think of Pixar, and they released a ton of movies in the 2000s, and that meant there were a ton of video games released. And I'm going to list some of these ones now, and this is a long list, and these are just the ones I picked out. There's Shrek, Bolt, Finding Nemo, B-Movie, Chicken Little, Stuart Little 3, Despicable Me, Ice Age, Madagascar, Monsters Inc., Over the Hedge, Ratatouille, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. The list goes on. And these are all quite similar games. Like, they're quite similar movies, let's be real. That doesn't mean they're bad, though. Honestly, the ones I listed, they're all exactly what I think a kid's video game based on a movie should be. You go through a story similar to the plot of the movie. Along the way, you complete challenges, similar to challenges maybe experienced in the movie, like a Ratatouille, you do like a cooking challenge. And all of these do that. They have, relatively okay controls. Graphically, they're actually quite good and look very similar to the movie. I think being an animated movie really, really helps that. And to children that have just watched a movie, they're fun. They're not terrible games. And yes, they might get terrible reviews from some random 50-year-old at IGN who doesn't even care about the movie. Yes, of course, to them, it's not going to be the best game ever. But to a little, a child who's just come and watched that movie and thought that was really cool, that was fun, they're good. They're not bad. Yes, of course they're cash grabs. Of course they could be better. Of course they could be their own standalone games that stand on their own. And most of these aren't that. But a lot of people who played those games found them fun. And that's really all that matters. Obviously, adult movies are a bit more difficult because obviously the target audience, they expect more of a decent game. But there were some decent games, which I'll list now. So, of course, Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3, all pretty good games. The multiple Star Wars games from the era, including Knights of the Old Republic, Jedi Knight 2, Rogue Leader, the Lord of the Ring games from the era. A personal favourite of mine, Italian Job. Absolutely loved that game on the PS1. Really good game. I've loved that growing up. It's just fun. And even a video game of a movie that wasn't released in the 2000s, Godfather came out, and it's a pretty well-received game. So there's some of the games that, they look back on quite favourably. But there are some games I really want to highlight a little bit more in detail, just because either they were really good, terrible, or just straight up weird. I'm going to start off with a bit of a random one, and it's essentially any Aardman film from the 2000s. Why do I find these funny? I couldn't really tell you, but just seeing that there's a video game of Chicken Run and Flushed Away, I just love that. I don't know what it is, but I just absolutely love that. And obviously Wallace and Gromit, because the Were-Rabbit came out, and there's also another weird Wallace and Gromit game that came out in this era. These games, I'm actually quite confident that when we go out later and we go and do some shopping for some of these games, I'm actually quite confident that we might be able to find some of the Wallace and Gromit games, because obviously I'm here in the UK, and when I've looked before, I always feel like I always see Wallace and Gromit video games. Next up, I have to highlight the Cars games, and this is not because they're weird or terrible, it's because they're really good. Because if any movie was perfectly suited for a video game, it's Cars, okay? Racing games are a whole massive genre. A movie about them called Cars that's literally perfect. And yeah, the game's pretty good, and they actually released 2 more games, which came out in the 2000s. Cars Meta National Championship and Cars Racerama. I've actually only played one of these games, and it wasn't even one of those ones. It was Cars 2, which I think came out in 2011. But that game's bloody great, right? If you ever played Cars 2, I think it was free on the Xbox store once. What a game, what a game. And talking of games I have to mention because they were quite good, the Lego games, obviously, Lego Star Wars. What an amazing game, or games, they are incredible. And there's so many Lego games that came out in this era. I'm not going to focus a huge amount on those because, they're not quite the same genre of the games that we're looking at, because they're actually good games, I guess. Next up, a game I had no idea existed, Saw. And this released on PC, PS3 and the Xbox 360. As you can guess, any game like this always gets mixed reviews and probably isn't actually that good, but the concept of it sounds really, really interesting. And so if we can somehow find one of these later on when we go out, that would be really, really cool. I'd love to try out this game, even though, on paper it doesn't actually sound that good. And actually, even if I can't find it, I probably will pick it up at a later date and actually probably play it on the channel because it sounds really cool. Now, one of the weird ones, Space Chimps. Whoa, okay. GeForce. Yep, there's a video game of this as well, which is incredibly weird to see. But I watched some videos of it. It actually looks good and was received pretty well, which I did not see coming at all. But not only was it received well, it was also 3D. Yeah, this game came with 3D glasses, and that's pretty cool. I mean, yeah, it's probably gimmicky, but it's still pretty innovative, right? That's cool. I haven't really seen many video games do that, so yeah, that's pretty cool. But I haven't really seen many video games do that, so. Next up, we have another rodents-based franchise. Of course, Alvin and the Chipmunks. Yes, a game of this exists. Unfortunately, this isn't the sort of game where you can walk around and explore as like Alvin or something. I think that would have been a really cool game. Actually, quite fun as well. It's actually just like a singing Guitar Hero-esque sort of game, but worse apparently. So yeah, a bit of a disappointment there. Moving away from some of the weird releases onto a series of iconic games, iconic movies, iconic books. The Harry Potter games, and as soon as I think of them, I think of this.
EA Games. Challenge everything.
Now, yes, you could technically say that these are based on books, not movies, but realistically, they were released to go alongside the movies, not the books. So obviously, these started out with Philosopher's Stone in 2001, which released exclusively on the PlayStation, and was an incredible success. Despite being, getting average reviews, it actually went on to sell 8 million copies, making it the 6th best-selling PS1 game of all time. It did end up releasing on the PS2, Xbox and GameCube 2 years after the original, and actually after the Chamber of Secrets had come out, which is a bit weird. But yes, Chamber of Secrets came out in 2002 and was received pretty well again, and sold over 9 million copies across the various platforms it released on. A spin-off based on Quidditch called the Quidditch World Cup, released in 2003. And by the way, I hated this game. If you've ever played it, piece of junk. I thought it was going to be the coolest ass game ever when I was growing up. Played it, junk. Was it because I was bad at the game? Yes. But also, Quidditch is Quidditch sucks, right? Who the hell plays Quidditch, right? Just a rubbish sport. Anyway, Prisoner of Azkaban released in 2004, and honestly, I don't know if it's just my nostalgia or what, but every game after this was totally forgettable. It felt like they just stopped really caring after the first two. I don't know if it just, got a bit repetitive, or maybe the magic of the first two, if you want to be cringy like that. But, I remember the first two games, specifically Chamber of Secrets. I remember playing that a lot, and, it was like actually a good game on its own, and then all the games after that just felt like pretty rubbish. And I think it's because they just didn't really do anything new with the games after that. They might be okay games, but they just weren't innovative. The first two felt fresh and new, and then the games after that, they're just the same over and over and over. And once you've done the first two, or even the first one, you know what the rest of the games are going to be like, especially if you've watched the movies. And it's a shame because some of the later movies are really good. My favourite movie is Goblet of Fire, right? That's my favourite one. And I think there could have been so much cool stuff they could have done with it. But playing the game of it is so boring. That's obviously up to debate though. But either way, I'm sure when we go out looking for the games, we are going to see a ton of these ones, right? These are definitely ones we're going to see. But back onto some of the weirder games, because next up, Elf. Why is there an Elf game, and why did it release exclusively for the Game Boy Advance? Such a strange release, but obviously, I'm guessing it was a lot easier to make a game for the Game Boy Advance. But that puts us nicely onto the topic of handheld games. So obviously in the 2000s, handheld gaming was as big as ever, right? The Game Boy Advance, the DS, the PSP. And so, of course, to maximize your profits, you had to release on these systems as well. But some of these games are atrocious. Now, I've always had a bit of a problem with, releasing games with the same name on inferior hardware, because I feel like you can easily get your hopes and expectations up for something, and then when you get it, because you've got like an older console or something like that, you're expecting like this big AAA game, and you get it and it's hopeless. It feels a bit like they're taking advantage of you, especially when you look at the advertising for the game and it's all of the game in like the best version of it. And handheld games, don't get me wrong, some are really good, but generally are worse than home console video games. And so when you combine this with movie-based video games, which are already basically worse versions of video games, you get some absolute rotters on handhelds. But the one I'm going to highlight now actually released exclusively on the PSP, but it was awful. And I'm talking about Napoleon Dynamite, the game. Oh my god, literally anything got a video game release. And of course there are so many more that I haven't mentioned, but I would be here for hours if I listed them all. But now we're going to see if we can relive this era, okay? We're going to go out, we're going to go shopping, we're going to go and see how many of these games we can find, okay? Because we want to relive the 2000s. Okay, this is a bit different, but yeah, I think the plan is we're going to go check out the shops in town. I think we're going to start off with Game, just because I think we're going to start off with low expectations. Game is not going to have anything, even though it's like the only actual video game shop. I think it's going to have nothing. I think it's now inside another shop. It's inside Sports Direct. I don't know what happened to Game. Game fell off. I think Game is like the equivalent for like Americans of like Game. And then I think charity shops, honestly, is the play after that. I think now you could have, because we're looking for older games, I think charity shops will be potential. I think it's unlikely we'll find movie-based video games specifically, but we'll give it a go. And then yeah, we've got the banker at the end, CEX, Kex. I think you're supposed to pronounce it sex, but like, who does that? That's just weird. I don't know if they're available in other countries, but Kex is basically like just a second-hand game shop, and like DVDs and stuff, and they will 100% have like the games we're looking for. So we'll say that till last because we'll try and get them from other places, but yeah, ultimately probably going to be Kex. But yeah, let's go. Okay, so off we set in the search of some games and a little walk into a town of a city. I'll let you guess which one it was. Anyway, so we started off with Game, which yes, was inside a Sports Direct, which is incredibly weird, but it meant we got to see this Tiger golf cover, which was quite cool. In terms of games, movie-wise, only really Spider-Man if you can count that, and some of the Lego games. It was just gaming merchandise really, but they did have these two beauties. Then we checked out some charity shops. Most were either closed or just had absolute nothing. There was this one charity shop which did have a couple of PS2 games, but they were just terrible. So that meant, of course, we had to go to Kex. And oh my god, Kex did not disappoint. So many movie-based video games. First up, as you can see, Rocky, which I thought was quite cool. A Star Wars game, they had loads of those. Shark Tale, which I was tempted by. Spider-Man 3, obviously very cool. Shrek 2, £6, quite steep. Yes, they had all the Harry Potter games, including the dreaded Quidditch World Cup. High School Musical, but without a microphone. Cat in the Hat, which is apparently awful. And then a bit of a peculiar game, Jackass. I had no idea this game existed. Looked really fun though. Might have to pick that up at some point. Then this really weird Catwoman game. I mean, I had to take a second look at the back of that. I would have felt far too creepy to buy that one, so I put that back. In terms of other consoles, the Wii had a couple of ones, like that Ratatouille, as you can see. The DS had Shrek Forever After, but I stuck to the PS2, and let's see what we got. Okay, so I picked up 3 games for the PS2. I didn't actually mention before, I actually only have a PS2. I'm at university, so obviously I don't have like an original Xbox, a GameCube, you know, a Wii. I don't have like thousands of consoles just in my room. I've got the PS2, which is actually here, which, I mean, by the way, what a cool looking console. Like, it slays. Like, look, oh my god, this is like my favorite thing ever. You see the PlayStation logo? Oh yeah? And now it's sideways, and now, as easy as that, it's vertical. Whoa, and it looks like a skyscraper. I mean, yeah. Anyway, moving on. The 3 games I ended up picking up only cost me £5. That's also the amazing thing about the PS2. Like, you can get so many games for like absolute dirt cheap. But yeah, I'll show you the 3 games now, and I'll start off with the cheapest game, which was only £1, and it's a film I'd never heard of. It was The Sum of All Fears. The Sum of All Fears. I think it's like a shooting game. I'm not really sure. It's like the more serious. The other 2 are a bit more like kids movies, because you know, as you probably saw from the footage, there are tons of kids movies. But yeah, this is it. As you can see there, £1, absolute bargain. And it's actually quite a cool looking game. But I actually like the case is cool. Let's have a little look inside. Let's have a look at the disc, because I always find these things fascinating as well. So the disc. Like, why don't they do this with disc anymore? Also, PS2 games, absolutely cool as hell. You can see the little camera I'm using as well, which is quite cool. Also, I always find it cool when you buy used games, is like the stickers there, so you can tell that's like a sticker that's like so old, probably like 20 years old, and it's from like the old, like the previous game shop that this was bought from, and I find that quite cool. So that's probably like Game or like Game Station or whatever, like from absolute years ago. So that's quite cool. Okay, next up we've got an incredibly weird game, but as soon as I saw it, I thought, yes, I have to play this game. I did feel incredibly embarrassed going up in the shop and asking them to find the disc for this game. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and it cost me £2. And yeah, oh my god, the disc looks, bro, the disc is looking cool. It's sadly not one of the blue ones, but yeah, even cooler little shot there. Look at that camera, cool. Okay. That is such a cool looking disc. You know, when people have like those mats, like you always see like the adverts for like, oh, the coolest gaming rug ever. Make one of this. I'd buy that. That looks cool as hell. So yeah, that's really cool. This is a really cool looking game. Oh, and the manual is actually in color. Yes, that's cool as hell. Yeah, this is a really cool looking game. I mean, the actual game is probably absolutely horrendous, but I mean, this just as the disc, and like if you're like a games collector, this is a really cool game. And you might be able to tell here, there's another thing in the box. These things are all like, whenever you get old games as well, they always come with these random ass wacky things where it's like you can send off in the post, like, as weird as that sounds now, you can send off in the post to sign up for Take-Two games. So I think that's 2K, is it? I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't know what would happen if I sent this off to that address and I put like a little stamp on there and I filled this out. It's like, so the questions are, your name, whatever, what game did you purchase? And I put in Charlie and Chocolate Factory. Which platform did you purchase game for? And oh my, The platforms they listed, so they've got PC, Xbox, GameCube, PlayStation, PlayStation 2, Game Boy Advance, fairly normal. And then you've got the Palm Pilot, if you can see that, and the N-Gage. Should I just put that I bought Charlie Chocolate Factory with the Nokia N-Gage? What the hell? But yeah, if you want me to fill that out and send that off, let me know, because like that, I'm guessing that just doesn't exist anymore, but that would be quite funny if I sent that off. And then the final game, the game I am most excited for. This one, oh my God. This is gonna be the most fun. The other games, right, you know, they're both story-based games. You have to dedicate quite a lot of time into them, whereas this one is Ants Extreme Racing. Oh, hell yeah. This is whack. I don't know what that means, but yeah, £2 for Ants Extreme Racing. And yeah, I mean, reading the, I don't know if you call them blurbs on games, but 0.5 miles per hour. That's extremely fast when your vehicle is only big enough to carry an ant. That's actually true. So yeah, a 0.5 mile an hour racing game, but actually it's going to be pretty fast. So yeah, this is really cool. And also, like, this is a game I can just pick up and play like whenever, sort of thing. Not that I'm gonna do that, but still, yeah, this one, I mean, it could be good. Could this be the Mario Kart killer? Could we make there be like a revival for Ants Extreme Racing if this is any good? Hell yeah. But yeah, the box art's pretty cool. I've actually never seen Ants, the film, or at least not in like the past 20 years, I haven't seen it. But yeah, we'll open this one up. The disc is a bit boring. Let's be real, it's quite cool with the grass. I mean, that's kind of cool. But yeah, pretty cool. I think all three of these games are gonna be exciting to try out. And yeah, I can't wait to get started with the Sum of All Fears. And do you know what, if the games are any good, maybe I should check out the movies. But yeah, let's get started. Okay, first of all, I need to actually see the disc, like if it actually works. Oh my God. Are you joking my ass right now? Oh, what? I'm pretty sure the disc reader on this PS2 is a bit janky. Right, second time lucky, come on. Just work. Oh, I mean, it looks fine, right? I'll try Charlie in the Chocolate Factory and see if that works instead. Come on, Charlie. Please, Charlie. For me. It worked. Okay. This is it. Charlie and Chocolate Factory actually works. Weirdly, the aspect ratio from recording it looks like 4:3, whereas on the TV I'm playing it on, it's literally 16:9, so I don't really get that. Bit weird. Oh, okay, here we go. Do you know what the graphics are? They're okay. Like, follow the $10 bill, okay. Let's have a look at what does he look like? Do you know what? That's actually not too bad. That is sort of what he looks like in the movie. What's that? Oompa Loompa follow. Okay. You have to knock the money off the fence. Watch that. Wow, that was easy. Wow, this is really interesting. I'm just chasing. Oh, okay. What the hell? Get a bit of a run up. No. I don't get. The money went over there, and I can't jump over this. So, what? The game's done. I'm stuck after 2 minutes of playing this game. It's already outsmarted me. I don't know what to do. Ah, I've got to move the box. Makes sense. Okay. There we go. Wow. Wow, that was amazing, that. Okay, we got the money. Great. That was a 10 out of 10 first mission. That was really, really good. Great game so far. Oh, okay. This is a bit different. It is. This frame rate of this game it's a bit laggy. Like, I feel like it's dropping frames. Maybe. Does this happen in the movie? I'm not quite sure it does. Oh, we got it. How is he now in the chocolate factory? I don't get that. He's just bought the chocolate bar and nothing happened, and now he's at the chocolate factory. Okay. Mission 2, find Oompa Loompas. Oompa Loompas are the best workers a cocoa bean can buy, but nearly impossible to keep track of. Which reminds me, you'll need 2 Oompa Loompas to help you, so try searching the meadow for them. Why do I need to find them? I don't run the chocolate factory, like... So this is the chocolate factory. Gotta say, it's Not quite as good as it looks in the movie. It's a bit oh, who is that? If you ever need help, Charlie, don't... Oh, it's Grandpa Joe. It's been a while, but I still... Okay, I just skipped that. What happens if I jump off? Nothing. Did he die? Maybe. But don't... Oh, I found one. Did I? Oh, okay. Follow. Is he following me? Oh, he is following me now. And there's the other one. Okay, I thought it was going to be a bit more difficult than that, but... Boom. Mission complete. Whoa, look at the water with the green screen. That's quite cool. What am I... Oh, sorry. I didn't actually read what I was supposed to do. I was messing around with the bottle. Okay, that was probably quite important. I completely just missed that. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Help Augustus by finding him. I've already found 2, mate. How many does he need? Okay, we all want to know what happens if I jump in the lake now with them following me. Do they come with me? I've lost them. Well, that was pointless. Okay, I shouldn't have done that. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Oh, is that him in the tube right there? Is it? Maybe? Oh, okay. Oh, press and hold up. Order all your Oompa Loompas to work. Get to work. Oh my god. The graphics. Pretty good. It's a Wonka pie. Wait, no it's not. That's Lolly Doodle. It's Wonka pie. You literally just said it wasn't. So, okay. I've got to say, so far, this is a pretty boring game. Right, this game. Honestly, maybe, I haven't given it too long of a chance, but I think we might call it there. It's quite boring, to be honest. And I don't really know what to do. Right, here we go. Little. Please. Please. No. No, that's utterly heartbreaking. I was desperate for it to... I didn't think this was going to happen. Oh, so annoying. In a desperate attempt to salvage this situation, I played Ants Extreme Racing on the Game Boy Advance. But as you can expect, it was incredibly boring and just terrible. So I'm not including that footage. What an absolute shambles. That was supposed to be this really cool, nostalgic segment of the video, and instead it just turned into hell. So yeah, sorry about that. I did actually look up the problem, and it turns out, as cool looking as blue discs are, they're not exactly the most practical. I do actually have another PS2 somewhere at home, so I guess I could try the games out on that, and if they work, if you want to see me try them out, I guess I could stream them or something, so let me know if you want to see that. Anyway, for the next part of the video, we're going to talk about what actually happened to movie-based video games. So in the early 2010s, we did actually see some more releases, like the Amazing Spider-Man games, Brave, a Captain America game, the final Harry Potter games, and of course another Alvin and Chipmunks game. But as the decade progressed, eventually the PS2 and Wii, their lives had to come to an end at some point, and they did. And this is really where the genre died. With the release of the Xbox One and PS4 in 2013, games became a lot bigger and even more complex to develop. And this meant for movie-based video games, it was now essentially impossible to complete a game quickly enough to coincide with a movie's release. But the biggest reason the genre died, the game stopped selling well. People woke up to the fact that licensed games, they're not actually very good. And with AAA games now looking like this, the contrast between them and cheaply made games was even more obvious to the consumer. To slightly caveat that, I do actually think if the Wii U had been a bigger success, we might have seen slightly more movie-based video games throughout the decade, because that would have opened up slightly more of the casual market, because actually for a while there, between 2012 and actually the release of the Switch in 2017, there wasn't really, that many offerings for the casual market. However, saying that, even if the Wii U had done better, I do still think the genre would have died, just maybe a slower, more painful death. Now, I say the genre died, and yes, the genre of there being a movie-based video game for every single movie that releases, that's died. But the genre as a whole does still somewhat exist. It's just different now. Because if we take a look at the few movie-based video games that have released in the past decade, they're generally games which can now stand on their own 2 feet, and the fact they're licensed is just an added bonus. For me, Friday the 13th is a really good example of this. It's a game which took an idea from a movie and turned it into a game perfectly suited for today's video game audience. Online multiplayer, streaming, content creation, it's huge nowadays, and Friday the 13th was a game perfectly suited for that. Yes, of course, the game is ironically dead now, but for a while it was actually quite a big success. Elsewhere, there's the Star Wars Battlefront games, Mad Max, and of course the 2 Spider-Man games. I think especially the Spider-Man games are a perfect example of how to make a licensed game nowadays. I know that game's not based directly on a movie of sorts, but still, I do think it paves the way for future franchises on how you can take a license and evolve it into a great game. Of course, that's not the only way they've evolved though. You've got add-ons in games such as Fortnite, where you've got Marvel, DC, John Wick, etc. And of course, mobile phones. Mobile games are such a great platform for them because the games can be so simple, they're so easy to produce, they're so cheap to produce, and the market they can reach is absolutely ginormous. So yeah, all that has meant that in the 2020s, only 8 movie-based video games which are on consoles have actually been released. But is that a bad thing? On one side you could say yes, because having options, well, it's never a bad thing. But generally speaking, we're now actually seeing good licensed games come out, and I can't speak for anyone else, but I'd much rather see 5 really, really good games than 300 mediocre games. However, one bad thing you could say is that with there being so little releases at the moment, there could be some really cool ideas for video games hidden within movies that we're never going to see. And speaking of which, that puts us on to our next segment, where I've come up with 3 ideas for video games based on movies which I think would be really cool. So for the first one I've got written down, something crazy happened, right? So I'm just going to read you what I wrote on the script for this. So first of all, not the most original, but an actual good Jurassic Park game. Jurassic Park is honestly one of the coolest movie franchises ever, but every game in my opinion kind of sucks. Building a park, yeah, that's kind of cool, but more like a PC game, Game Boy Advance games, get lost. I would love to see an open world survival based game in the style of Jurassic Park. I think that would be really cool, almost like a horror game, and maybe there could be online modes where you have to work together to complete tasks to get away. And why is that weird? Well, some of you watching will know that's actually happening. What on earth? I have no idea how I hadn't heard of this earlier, but yeah, Jurassic Park Survival is in development, and it's literally exactly what I described there. It's still not official when the game's actually going to release, but the early teasers look really, really promising. And actually the bit I said about there being online, that's not being confirmed, but I do think that would be really cool, so I hope they add that in. But either way, absolutely huge dub, and yeah, I can't wait for it, and maybe that gives me optimism for the 2 other games I put on the list. But yeah, on to that second game, or sort of the first game now, Hunger Games. Why has there never been a Hunger Games video game? It's literally perfect. When you consider the success of Battle Royale games in the last 10 years, I don't know why they never thought of this. Why did they never make a Hunger Games video game? And yes, I know that the book and movie came out, quite a long time before the success of Battle Royale games, but still you can release a movie-based video game after the movies come out. And I don't get why they didn't think of this, especially when there was the whole Minecraft Hunger Games thing going on. People were playing that loads. Why didn't actual Hunger Games license out their movie? I don't get it. Because it would do amazing, surely. It would be such a unique spin on the Battle Royale genre. Imagine there was you could have an offline mode where it's this whole really long-winded Battle Royale game where it's offline and you have to build up materials, and maybe there's a career part of it earlier where you have to get sponsors, show off your skills, hone your skills. I think that could be so cool. And then could be an online mode, which is a shorter version of it, maybe a half an hour game. And yeah, you could have you could build up your own character, so you could perform better in online things where you get more sponsors. I don't know. There's so much you could do with this game. I think it'd be really cool. Let me know what you think of it, because yeah, I think we need to make this happen. And then my third pick, this one, okay, this is a bit of a weird one, bit of a random one, and I'm not entirely sure it would actually work, but I've gone for The Truman Show. Yeah, this is a bit of a stretch, this one, but I do think there's somewhat of an idea within this, if someone could work on it. You're in an enclosed, open world area, you're living your daily life, but you've got to, try and get out of this area without raising too much suspicions. You've got to maybe do tasks, hiding away from cameras. You've got to identify where all the cameras are, but without raising suspicion. Yeah, I think there could be really cool idea with this. I don't know how it would actually work. I don't know if there'd be an online, probably not an online version, but a story mode of this, I think could be quite cool. Obviously, it doesn't quite work because obviously Truman in the movie doesn't know he's being watched, whereas if you're coming into it having already watched a movie, you're going to know that you're being watched. So it doesn't quite work, but I think there's an idea within that which could be quite a cool video game. Yeah, a bit of a stretch, that last one, but I think the first two could be really, really cool. Well, the first one will be cool, hopefully, and the second one, if it ever exists, I think it'll be really cool. But yeah, they're my ideas. But let me know your ideas, because I'm sure there's so many of you out there which have some really, really great ideas for video games based on movies that just haven't existed, or maybe even some that have existed but you'd like remastered or reworked or done with a different concept, which could be really cool. Let me know your ideas down below, because I'm sure there are some which are going to be really, really cool that like people haven't thought of. And maybe, you never know, we could speak them into existence. You know, if it's a really cool idea, such as the Hunger Games one, you know, don't want to beat my own drum, but come on, guys, that's really cool. You better agree. But yeah, let me know your ideas in the comments down below. But yeah, anyway, to conclude, movie-based video games from the 2000s, they're a thing of the past, and I think it's a good thing. If you're nostalgic for them and you think, oh, the good old days, why can't we have them now? Guess what? You can do what I did. You can go down. You can get so many games for cheap and relive them. Well, unless they're blue discs, of course. But yeah, some of them are really cool things of the past to look back on and give a go. But saying that, I do think gaming is now in a better space without them. So looking ahead now, what do I think is going to happen? I think more of the same. And more of the same is, well, essentially barely any movie-based video games releasing, but the ones that do, yeah, are their own standalone games and are cool and they're big. They're almost like AAA games. For example, along with that Jurassic Park Survival game, there's a new 007 game which is releasing, and I think that could be really, really good, especially because it's being made by the people who made the Hitman games, and I absolutely love those games. So I think like a James Bond version of that could be really cool, but also work as its own standalone game. And that's what the developers have said. They're making a video game first and foremost, not a James Bond game, and I think that's how the industry should be going. But yeah, that along with the Jurassic Park game, there's definitely stuff to look forward to, and I'm hopeful for this genre. But yeah, thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts on it all. Obviously, let me know any ideas, as I said before, but also give me some, you know, some cool stories, maybe of, you know, you reminiscing playing some of these games when you were younger. Yeah, let me know any funny stories or anything you have, or just your thoughts on the genre as a whole, thoughts on any of the points I made in this video, because I'm sure I'm definitely wrong about some of them. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And yeah, thank you for watching this absolute mess of a video. I do apologise for how bad that middle segment was. I'm still bloody mad. I can't be mad at the games, because it's not the game's fault, it's the bloody PlayStation's fault. But it's not the PlayStation's fault. It's my fault. I should have checked, but yeah, sorry about that. I do have some more videos based on, you know, the 2000s, that sort of nostalgic era in the pipeline, looking at some more like retro tech, maybe like smartphones, computers, things like that. Let me know any ideas for that that you'd want to see in the comments down below. Next video should be looking at going back to what we've been doing before, while we're looking at some pretty terrible movies. I'm hopefully doing one on a Christian Twilight, which could be really funny. So stay tuned for that. Be sure to like, subscribe, all that if you enjoyed. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching this mess, as I said. And yeah, goodbye.
There you have it. That ends my report from the scene.